Hello and welcome to the Game Football Podcast from The Times. 3 big games this weekend and all of them finishing 3-0. What are the chances? On today's show, we'll discuss big victories for Arsenal, Tottenham and Manchester City, and a draw for Chelsea as all four sides prepare for Champions League action this week. Liverpool and Newcastle are also playing in Europe and they picked up wins too. And we'll also talk about Bournemouth's win as they introduce us to a new defensive star. I'm Tom Clark, and today I'm joined by the senior sports writer and Sunday Times columnist Alison Rudd, the former footballer turned journalist Gregor Robertson, and joining us down the line from Manchester is the football reporter Paul Hurst. Hursty, hello.
Hello, good morning.
Welcome to the new studio where you're beamed in at us. Alison's first time in the new studio.
Looks like you're on a different planet.
Yes, we're in a very, very green planet in the studio. Alison in the new studio for the first time, excited, enthused?
Yeah, it's like being on Mars.
Like being in a different world altogether, but it's very exciting. And Hursty, thank you very much for joining us because we're going to start in Manchester. After more box office stuff from Ruben Amorim, it's very, very tempting to start not on the football in any way, shape or form. But let's start on the match and talk about what was a good City performance, Paul. Would you say 3-0 was the correct result?
I would say so, yeah. I think that obviously City were the better team. I don't think it was a horrendous Manchester United performance, and I have been to a few of these fixtures over the years where you turn up and you think, my God, this could be we could be in 5, 6, 7 territory for Man City when Man City have been at their best. But, this is a City team that only got 3 points from their first 3 matches, so they weren't exactly brimming with confidence, had a lot of injuries, but they still found it relatively easy to turn United over. I thought Haaland was exceptional yesterday, and Phil Foden obviously as well. Donnarumma had a huge part to play as well. He played very well, very authoritative on his debut. I thought United played reasonably well first 10-15 minutes of each half, particularly first half. They looked pretty solid, but then they just keep making mistakes that lead to goals, and they couldn't finish their own chances, so they only had themselves to blame, really. They've just got so much more quality, Man City, up front than United have, and you look at the amount of chances that United have created this season, and they haven't put them away. I was reading that they created more chances in the first 3 matches than any other team, but it's still only won one of those games. So, again, we come back to this question about Ruben Amorim. Is he suitable for that job? And does he have the actual, drive himself to do it? Because every time he appears in front of the cameras, he looks like he just wishes he was, further away. He just wants to get away from United, and go back to how things were before he started this really disastrous reign.
Yeah, we'll definitely come on to Ruben Amorim, but I'm just very, very keen to make sure we do cover some of the City points because, as you say, Paul, Erling Haaland, absolutely terrific. I saw some stats over the weekend. He's now got more Premier League goals than Didier Drogba, more Manchester Derby goal involvements than Wayne Rooney, more Premier League hat-tricks than Robin van Persie, and more goals in a single season than Alan Shearer. He's not doing too bad, given that we've got, another 7, 10, 9 million years of him, Gregor. But just on the game, Gregor, would you agree with what Hursty said? Did you think 3-0's about fair? United okay in parts, just before we get into the bigger issue type points?
I think it could have been more, quite easily. Haaland missed that absolutely jaw-dropping sitter where he kind of somehow managed at the post. Reinders clean through as well. It just kind of, United became more and more stretched in the second half. I think it could have been more quite easily. Arsty's right. United were pretty kind of like solid and orderly in the opening stages, but so little adventure, so little kind of commitment to like getting players forward and any sign of real combinations. I thought you just keep coming back to the system, and like Amorim keeps kind of being. He seems sort of like getting really annoyed about the fact that he's being asked about it every single week, but it does seem like it's not working. So he's banging his head against the same brick wall. So I think the other thing that kind of jumped at me is that there's players that have kind of gone off the boil a bit or just dropped below their standards for City. Rodri's coming, returning to fitness still. Guardiola had a drop off last season. Same with Diaz. Silva. I think they've all kind of in this game, certainly, you just saw that their players are like stature.
Yeah.
Ready to perform on this big stage.
And Phil Foden, I thought, I could tell he'd been listening to all those stupid football
Foden.
podcasts during the international break saying he's not good enough for the England team. Who was that, Gregor? That wasn't us, was it? No, definitely not. But he looked excellent, didn't he, Hursty? And he loves this fixture, doesn't he? Obviously, as a Manchester lad and a City fan. But he looked really, really on it.
He's such a big player, Foden. You get a lot of players who kind of like shy away from the big games, but he just revels in them. He just, remember him scoring in those tight run-ins with Liverpool. Remember him scoring at Anfield and scoring in the biggest games for City, the derbies particularly as well. Like you say, being a local lad, he's got that extra motivation to beat United, and I thought that was his best performance in a long time yesterday. I just love the fight that he got in him. I noticed after he'd scored the goal and he went and celebrated in the corner that after the restart, Bruno Fernandes was giving him some lip, and Foden was just like shouting stuff back at him. I'd love to have known what was said between those two, but he just doesn't shy away from a battle. Foden, he really, he's really tenacious when he's in that kind of mood. He's one of the best players that England have got, the best players in the Premier League. So it was really nice to see him at his best again, and he was completely different towards the end of last season. I remember talking to him after the FA Cup final, and he looked really down in the dumps. Said he'd had an ankle injury. The fact that he picked up against Man United, Casemiro injured him in April, and he'd been struggling with that towards the end of last season. Then we got to the Club World Cup in America, and we spoke to him then, and it was just like difference between night and day. He was so confident, really cocky, really sure of himself again, and you could see that in his game yesterday. Little tricks, trying things that he just wouldn't do towards the end of last season. So he's heading back towards his very best form again.
Yeah, I think Bruno Fernandes was going, the game podcast, Phil, they don't rate you. They've not even got you in the England team. Saying Morgan Rogers is better than you, mate. That might have been what it was. I feel like a little bit like a politician trying to keep everyone away from the big topic that everyone wants to talk about by talking about the actual football. Weird, so stupid. So let's talk about Ruben Amorim. He is box office for a journalist and for any editor. I know my colleague Joe Hare was editing yesterday, and he's just going, he just comes in and delivers the quotes yet again. Headline on the Times website now: Ruben Amorim, you'll have to change the manager if you want a new system. It's quite remarkable, isn't it, Alison? I mean, you've all been in many, many press conferences over the years. Alison, been in thousands probably.
Yes.
This is for a Manchester United manager under pressure to come out and say this after a derby defeat in September. We are at absolutely bonkers stage, aren't we?
Yeah, but he's succumbing to the sunk cost fallacy, which is what people do when they put money into a scheme that isn't working, and they think, well, I've already put £5,000 in. If I take it out and put it somewhere else, I've wasted £5,000, so I'm going to follow up that £5,000 with another £5,000, and that doesn't work. And you just cannot extricate yourself from it because you feel you've already committed. So, in terms of, it's too far along the line for him to say. It's impossible now for him to say, I was wrong, or I might have been right in my head, but it's not right in practice, and I'm going to change. He's gone too far down the path. So. The weird thing is I wasn't surprised he said it because he's very consistent. But I wrote in my column on Sunday, one of the biggest mysteries of football is why a club like Manchester United decided it was clever to appoint someone who was so wedded to one way of playing. And that was it. That was the thing about him. There weren't other things. There really weren't.
Well, he did it very well. He did it very well.
Amicable and having some success in Portugal.
Yep.
His thing, and I get very cross when people call it a philosophy, and when he calls it philosophy, it's not a philosophy to have one system. Exactly. That's really weird. That's just a tiny, 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 tiny part of football. Philosophies go much deeper and bigger than that. But I wrote, the biggest mystery in football is why you would appoint somebody on this basis. It's like owning a bakery, having a pastry chef who says, I am only going to bake pain au chocolat, but you have a kitchen that never stocks chocolate. So Manchester United are a croissant.
Absolutely. Ding. I need this bell for Alison Rudd analogy. That is top notch. We're only in September. That's already analogy of the season. Go on,
Totally
Gregor.
agree with that. Like, it's like you think of someone like Russell Martin last season at Southampton.
Yeah.
And that was a philosophy, whether how foolish or doomed it was. He was like, it was a commitment to a certain way of playing football. This is not a way of playing football. There's no evidence of a way that Manchester United are under Ruben Amorim are supposed to be playing football. All there is a shape.
Do you know
and it's a shape that's flawed.
Is there any sense, Paul was saying, and I agreed with him, you watch them sometimes in these games for the first 10 minutes of both halves. And I'm not saying this is a defence of him, but it does kind of talk to some of the things he said about, the players need this rigidly drilled into them, where for the 10 minutes after he's spoken to them, just before he's spoken to them, they deliver exactly what he wants them to do. And then the game kind of pans out and you get to 20 minutes and it all gets a little bit messy. Is that because, Hursty, maybe pick up here because you were in the ground, and you made the point initially. Is that what it is? You hear about you and Charlotte talking about being on tour and watching him walk the players through training sessions with cones and mannequins and stuff. Is it that he almost needs to be on the pitch with them going, now you go, quick, now. Like, what is it?
Yeah, he's very present on the touchline, and it's not got to the stage, where Mourinho was shouting to Luke Shaw, instructed him for every kick. Do you remember that one? He got to that level, but he's so stubborn. He's so stubborn. And I remember when I was doing a backgrounder on him last November, when it became clear that United were going to appoint Amorim. Spent a week or so in Portugal. And talking to everyone there, at Sporting Lisbon, for talking to agents who've got players at the club. And one of the agents said, as part of the piece I wrote, he said his main attribute is his stubbornness, his self-belief, but it is also his biggest downfall. And that has become so clear here. You look at it's not. I don't think it's just the system either. I think the system. There are patches this season where they've looked quite good. They played quite well against Arsenal. First half against Fulham, they looked all right. And in the end, they had loads of shots, didn't they, against Burnley? They ended up winning in the end. But the main point, the biggest concern I would have if I was a Man United fan, would be that these players have been coached by him for nearly a year now. And he's had a full pre-season to deal with them, and this season he's not got any midweek games. He's not got any non-Premier League games until January because they got knocked out of the Carabao Cup by Grimsby. So he has got the maximum time that he could get with these players, but they don't get it, and they're still making silly mistakes as well. You look at all those 3 goals yesterday, completely avoidable, all 3 of them. They were just, I don't think any of that came down to the system. It just came down to, a lack of skill or composure or concentration, and that is, that doesn't reflect well on the players. It doesn't show that they're of high enough quality. But surely, as a manager, it's your role to make these players better. And if you've got 5-6 training sessions with them a week, they should be pretty well drilled. Even if you're coming up against Erling Haaland, you should have a fair idea of what he's good at. You should know that you shouldn't give away the ball, on the halfway line for him to, leave 50 yards of green grass for him to run onto. So I just think it's, as time goes on with Amorim, that there are fewer and fewer excuses for him. I just think his stubbornness at the start was admirable. My way or the highway. Get another man if this isn't working. But it just clearly it isn't working, is it? So I just think if he would be able to change a little, then maybe that would help her. Give a change in direction. Even look at Ange Postecoglou last season. He was the most kind of wedded to his philosophy manager you've ever seen. But in that the Europa League final against Man United, admittedly one of the most terrible games I've ever witnessed live. But as soon as Spurs went 1-0 up, they didn't look like they were going to concede. They didn't go hell for leather for 2 or 3 or 4 goals. He changed his philosophy, as they say, and just kind of held on to the lead. But Amorim won't do that. He's just, to me, it just seems.
It's just the weirdest. It's just the strangest hill to die on.
It is, yeah. It's frustrating seeing it because he can.
And he is going to die on it.
Do you think, are you suggesting there that there is potential there that if they change system, they would be better? Because that's your point. And Alison's saying, he can't change now. He's gone too far down the line. Are we all saying that if just chill out, Ruben, go on, do 4-2-3-1 for a laugh, just one game, let's see, they'd suddenly be great.
Is there a machine? Is there a machine where you can put in the players?
Here we go, another analogy.
No, it's not an analogy. It's a question. Is there a machine where you can put in the players and then convert it to a better formation, say 4-2-3-1?
It's called Football Manager, I think.
and then, well, then what happens then?
No, but that's the point, isn't it?
Do they start winning?
That's what I'm asking you lot, and I'm asking you, the former footballer. You're saying,
hang on, this is the infuriating thing about Manchester United is you do have, you go around and we've gone around in circles for years now. Like they still have a squad that's well below their opposition at the weekend. Yes, Hursty was saying it's the job of the manager to improve the players. It's also his job to give them a platform to be able to do the things they do well. And this system does not do that. It's so specialised. We've said this so many times. Like the need for such high level wing backs is it's extraordinary, and they don't have them. They don't have them.
Yeah, you're right.
And also for pretty specialised midfielders, I don't think they have them either. So, also you need very athletic defenders. I think they've got one of them maybe, and maybe Heaven if he's fit. But De Ligt's not that. At least he's been okay, but he's not. De Ligt would rather play in a back four. No one could dispute that. Luke Shaw can do a job there, but I don't know if you're going to hang out on him either just now. So and they need to, they've just signed another goalkeeper again. So there are so many. We go around in circles all the time. So many issues, but you come back to, you could probably sweep a few of them under the carpet if you were just a little bit more pragmatic and willing to sort of look at your players and think, how am I going to get the best out of this team, this squad?
Go on, Hursty.
Sorry, Gregor, you'll know better than me on this, but the wing back situation for me is. I know, again, we've talked about this a lot, so apologies for repeating here. But again, when I went to watch Amorim Sporting, he had four wing backs, right, who he rotated, and they're all pretty quick. But I remember watching, as soon as they lost possession, the fullbacks would run back. Sorry, the wing backs, if they were in attack, which they not often were, would run back and sort of become part of a five-man defence. So they retreat, but they wouldn't leg it back, a professional term. They wouldn't sprint back. They'd sort of saunter back, and they just because they know. But I remember sitting there thinking, and this is a Portuguese cup match I think I was watching at the time. I can't remember even who we were playing, but I remember thinking that will not work in the Premier League. You can't have fullback with your wing backs going suddenly from attack to just jogging back, blah blah blah, really kind of slowly. It just won't work. You'll get hit on the counter so quickly. The pace of the Premier League is so much quicker. So that for me was an alarm bell already. And the other one that I think, two big errors he's made this season is taking Bruno Fernandes, the best player in the post-Ferguson era, admittedly a low bar, but still a pretty good player, and moving him out of his best position and playing him deeper, and to the point where, yesterday, Phil Foden sort of just walked round the back of him and headed the goal in.
Yeah.
When he was supposed to be clearing the ball Fernandez's role was supposed to be clearing the ball in the box. So he's done that. He's taken the best player out of his best position. Maybe the only world-class player that United have got on his day, but he's not moaning at referees for getting his path while he's taking a penalty. And the other one is the goalkeeping situation. I could have understood getting rid of Onana if they had brought in Martinez and Lamens. But now you're in a situation where Bayindir, God bless him, he's just not good enough, is he? He's not. At the start of the season, start of the summer, right? United offered I can't remember the exact numbers, but they were supposed to have offered. From what I heard, they'd offered Bayindir to. They give an agent a license to to the mandate to offer Bayindir around Turkey, and this is a point where Fenerbahce are looking for a goalkeeper, right? And other Turkish teams you thought would have been interested in a Turkey international, which he is, but they didn't sign him. And then at the end of the summer, you end up losing Onana, who, despite his faults, is better than Bayindir, and he goes to Trabzonspor, who are willing to offer him more money, etc., whatever. But then to replace, so now you're left with the keeper who's worse than your number one, and a 23-year-old Belgian kid who may be brilliant in 2 or 3 years' time, but they don't need results in 2 or 3 years' time. They need them now.
Yeah.
And as soon as Haaland went through yesterday, I might as well have, started writing third goal's gone in, because he was always going to score, wasn't he? A, because Haaland's brilliant one-on-ones, but B, Bayindir is just not good enough at. He wouldn't keep that shot out, would he? Second goal, he went to ground too easy as well. So, I mean, that when you've not got a goalkeeper who radiates confidence to the back four or back three, whatever, then it just sets a really bad, it's a really bad starting point for your team, and you can tell that they've not got confidence in him. He's just not good enough, is he, Bayindir? So, I mean, Lamens is, he's. United fans will be desperate for him to come in, but if he comes in against Chelsea and Cole Palmer fancies it, he might score 4 or 5 next week, and then Lamens' confidence is back down to 0. So,
but that's an interesting point, Paul, because is Bayindir just full stop a below par keeper, or is he getting worse because of the situation at United? Because I agree with you, that's one of the poorest goalkeeping displays I've seen. Like, when you play tennis, you don't hang around in the middle of the court. You make a decision to go to the net, or you're at the back, and he's in the wrong place all the time.
Yeah, and he's if I was playing against Man United, if I was one of these set piece coaches or whatever, or just a coach for planning for a game against United, you just put crosses in every 5 minutes, because you just can't decide when to come for crosses. And I don't think he's progressed at all. I think he's played 15 games for United now. I think he's only won 2 Premier League games. One of them was the 3-2 against Burnley, and the other one was the 2-0 win over Aston Villa on the last game of last season, when admittedly United were really good, but Villa pretty much, they just didn't turn up, did they?
Yeah.
So I don't think he's improved at all. I think he's regressed. So, which is why when they offered him around Turkey, no one was bothered.
Yeah.
So
it's that Manchester United vortex again. Paul, I've got to say, we're always thinking about what clips we could put out on social media. Bayindir, God bless him, might just be the only one. I think that you could just do 5 seconds of that. I think we all feel sorry for him in some respects. I thought this was going to be a really pointed question just to wrap up the Manchester United section, but I think it's the most obvious answer in the world. I was going to give Ruben Amorim until Christmas, but I'm tempted to ask you whether he'll be in a job come the next international break. Guys in the studio, just a snap answer: will Manchester United have a new manager at Christmas? And then Hursty will let you have a little bit more detail. Alison?
They'd be mad if they didn't have a new manager. Mad. But I wouldn't put it past them for the sunk cost fallacy issue to just keep going.
I think they'll keep going.
For 5 years.
I think Ruben Amorim will still be in charge at Christmas. Gregor?
No.
Hursty?
It can't carry on like this, can it? There's that Mick McCarthy quote, isn't
Yeah.
Remember,
It can.
Worse than this.
It can.
But just from talking to people this morning at United, and it was the same after Grimsby, that they're still with him. They still back him. They always say it's long-term projects. So they, as Alison says, they're in for a penny, in for a pound now. They're really backing him. The thing is, if they sack him, it's a black mark against Ineos, isn't it? It's the first black mark against them in terms of their managerial appointments. They always obviously argue that Ten Hag wasn't their guy, and they gave him enough opportunities to prove them wrong, and obviously ended up sacking him in the end. But he's their guy. They've invested so much, literally, in a new strike force for him this summer. So they're backing him, but in my mind, if this carries on, if they keep getting 1 win out of 4, then they're not gonna be they're gonna be in 15th again, aren't they? And you can't have that for 2 seasons in a row. So yeah, if it comes to that time, if it comes to Christmas and they're still in this position, I just don't see any reason for keeping him on.
They're 17th out of all the ever present teams in the Premier League since he got the job. He has the worst record in the Premier League since he's been a Premier League manager. He's not got long.
There we go. Manchester United fans, if you've got views on Ruben Amorim's future, do get in touch with me. tom.clark@thetimes.co.uk. Let's talk about the Champions League. It's back this week with a raft of absolutely cracking fixtures. I've got to say, as a sports editor, I'm looking at this list going, "Whoa, yeah, come on, let's have a bit of this." Hursty, you're going to Man City against Napoli, which again, sorry Manchester United fans, allows us to talk about more cock-ups by Manchester United because, as I quote an Italian journalist who Hursty spotted on Twitter, saying, "God bless Manchester United. No club in the world has been better than them at ruining the talent of footballers in the last 10 or 12 years. Today," he's talking about Napoli, "we saw a great Rasmus Højlund. Last year, McTominay led Naples to the Scudetto. We can't stop thanking them." And that is because Rasmus Højlund is up and running for Napoli, isn't he, Hursty? Scoring in a 3-1 win at the weekend. I mean, you've got
a smile on his face.
You've got to either cry or laugh. It's one or the other, isn't it? But Hursty, back to City. Oh, actually, you can go with Napoli if you like, whatever you want. But this will be a really interesting game because we've also got the return of Kevin De Bruyne, haven't we?
Yeah, and it'd be an emotional night for him. There was, the send off for De Bruyne was really, really emotional for City fans. Really emotional for him. He wanted to stay for another season, and he's very kind of, again, another stubborn guy he'll really want to prove that he's still got it. I think towards the end, I think it was the right decision to let him go. I think he was, he was putting in amazing performances, one in every 5 or 6 when he used to do that every game previously before his injuries. But I'm really interested to see how it goes. McTominay, as you said, is won Serie A Player of the Year last year, didn't he? And he's firing all cylinders as well. And then he got Rasmus Højlund, finding the back of the net. Yeah, who would have thought it at the weekend? So yeah, there's a lot of subplots there, but the other point here is that City got they've not got an easy run. They've got some quite difficult fixtures. So the Monaco away is the next one. They don't want to end up in the situation where they were last year, where they were scraping through. They needed a win in the last match against Club Brugge to get through. They want to be in that top, in that top part of the table when it comes to the second round. They don't want another playoff, don't want another game in February, early March. So that'll be weighing quite heavily on their mind as well. They can't start off slowly in this competition.
Yeah, really tricky. As you say, some big games this week. Athletic Bilbao against Arsenal and Tottenham against Villarreal. That's on Tuesday night. Then Bayern Munich against Chelsea and Liverpool. Atletico Madrid on Wednesday. And then City, Napoli and Newcastle, Barcelona on Thursday. Newcastle and Liverpool both getting 1-0 wins this weekend. Gregor, do you reckon?
A good weekend. A good week of football.
Yeah, it's good, isn't it? I told you lot weren't on board with me when I was getting excited 2 minutes ago, but it's an absolute cracker. I mean, Gregor, do we think Liverpool maybe the luckiest start to a Premier League season in the history of football? Maybe, do we think? Yeah,
it's up there. Yeah,
you're definitely up
right
there.
Up there.
Alison, how you doing? Yeah,
no,
all right.
It's actually
sign of champions. Blah 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 blah.
Experience
Yeah.
for it to go deep into a match and have no qualms that they're going to get.
Oh yeah, you're back now with the drama. This is what you wanted last season when Arne Slot was winning every game 2-0 by 60 minutes. You're back. You're happy now. But obviously, all these English teams in the Champions League. So just a little bit of fun before the tournament gets going. If you had to pick an English team who could win it, not I'm saying they will win it, but if you picked an English team to win it, who would we go for? And I'm going to pick Tottenham and Thomas Frank before Alison Rudd does. They're going to long throw and corner kick their way to glory. We'll talk about them more in the second half of the show. Gregor, if an English team had to win it?
Arsenal.
Why?
Their defence, and now coupled with ridiculous number of attacking options. I was at the game at the weekend, and you just look at who's on the bench, who's missing, and they've got the depth to compete on all fronts, which is really important when you're going deep into the competition. So, but also just that bedrock of their defence. I think those two things can give them a chance.
Hursty?
It's got to be Liverpool for me. I think you can't add that much depth to your squad and not be considered proper challenges for it. They came top the group last year, didn't they? And they should have really gone further. So if you're adding players like, of top quality like Verts and Isaac to your squad, then and Ekatike as well, then they've got to be. I would say they've got to be considered favourites for the whole thing.
Alison?
Oh, Hursty's spot on there, isn't he?
Sorry.
A very wise young man is Paul Hurst.
Yes, but I've mentioned Thomas Frank and now Hursty's mentioned Liverpool, so you've got to pick a different team.
I don't actually have to do anything except for Silver. But I mean, my point about Liverpool, compared to Arsenal, they have the history and the know-how of how to win in Europe. I've just put
Do they
that
have the
out.
defence?
I think the reason Liverpool have splashed a lot of cash is because they saw how tired they were in those 2 legs against PSG. And the blooming ladder system means nothing. We all know that now. It doesn't mean you'll get an easy game when it's the knockout phase. So you have to be ready. Your team has to be stacked with talent so you can rotate properly. And I do feel that's a big focus for Liverpool. And I think a team like Liverpool has spent the money, has the focus and the indignation of what happened last season. I think Hurst's right. Hursty's right. They are favourites.
Hurst is right. Get the T-shirts in now. That's the second follow-up T-shirt from the Game podcast. Hurst is right. With on the back in quotes by Endear. God bless him. Hursty, thank you very much for joining us for the first half of the show. It's been great to have you with us from Manchester. We're going to take a little break and we're going to test Alison and Gregor's knowledge and see whether they can get any of the stats right from Bill Edgar's quiz, which Gregor's normally read before we come on the show, so it's technically cheating. But I'm going to ask the question, who this weekend became the first team in top flight history to follow 6 wins in a row, which they achieved from March to April, with only 1 point from the next 8 games? Find out after the break. Welcome back to the Game Football Podcast from The Times. I'm Tom Clark and I've got Alison Rudd and Gregor Robertson still with me. Paul Hurst has gone off to write a piece about Manchester United. God knows what he's going to say. But just before the break, I asked the quiz question, who this weekend became the first team in top flight history to follow 6 wins in a row with only 1 point from the next 8 games? Gregor Robertson.
Wolves.
Not going to mention them on this show, but it's not a great start for them. It's looking a little bit worrying, but I'm sure we'll talk about them on a show in the future. Another side with a defeat at the weekend, Leeds United. Gregor conceding one of the most ridiculous late own goals. I was speaking to Hamza Kalik-Lunat, who was there for us, and he messaged me at one point saying, Tom, this game... and then he came theme, fence. Good on him, got a point away from signs for the promoted signs, and that's Goodmanson with... Ever seen own goal, Gregor?
More bonkers.
Yeah.
Chris Brass.
Oh, yeah, true.
I mean, he wins that competition hands down every...
But this was
time
pretty good. For the distance away from the goal, and how it hit him and everything.
Yeah. I have sympathy for him because
Of
it's one of
course,
them where
we all do.
you don't see it coming at all. I remember doing one. It wasn't an own goal, but I remember once having the same thing. But the ball came through so late that I tried to manipulate myself to clear it, and I essentially passed the ball straight to someone in the box, and they scored. So it's there's not much. There's nothing you can do about it. Try and move your
goals.
I don't think I scored an own goal.
Never.
That's the closest I could get to Tom.
What? I bet his defensive teammates would do
Someone will
near the
correct me on
box.
that.
Near the Anyone get in touch with me who played with or against Gregor Robertson, Tom.Clark at
Only
the
the
Times.
great defenders score.
Exactly. The one hiding out on the touchline. I'm a left back. I don't get anywhere near the goal. Anyway, speaking of promoted sides with good defensive points at the weekend, a big point for Sunderland at Crystal Palace. Game listener Kenny getting in touch to say, Tom, I love football. And why wouldn't you? You're a Sunderland fan. 7th with 7 points. Absolutely brilliant start to the season from them. Bournemouth also having a brilliant start to the season. I really enjoyed James Gearbrandt's report in the Sunday Times at the weekend. I'll just read you this. For some casual fans, for some neutral fans, this might have passed them by. James said, having signed a 20-year-old centre-back whom they lost to Paris Saint-Germain and a 19-year-old centre-back who was picked off by Real Madrid, Bournemouth responded in the only way they can, by signing an 18-year-old centre-back who, making his debut in this feisty South Coast clash against Brighton, gave such a commanding performance he was named man of the match. If the task of pronouncing Vlečko Milosavljević, absolutely nowhere near what his name is, but I gave it a go, was a stiff test for the commentators and Stadium Tannoy man, the Serbian teenager had no such issues announcing himself. It's a brilliant piece by James, all about a new player who I'm sure will be joining Chelsea in about 12 months' time.
You know how they do that, don't you? They say to these 18, 19 and 20-year-olds, we will give you Premier League football.
Yep.
We're not going to cosset you and train you and maybe give you, an EFL Cup game now and again. You join us because they'll have, if they're that good, they will have other suitors. They say to them, we will give you straight away, you'll come into the Premier League. And that's how they get them. And that's how they develop them.
And that's how they get all the
I feel
way.
like there's quite a lot to discover about both those two teams as well. Still, Sunderland, I think they only had 2 players from last season starting.
Yeah.
A lot of a lot still to learn about Sunderland and all the signings they made. And it's true of Bournemouth. They're kind of powers of regeneration are extraordinary. So.
Yeah. Well, Bournemouth and Sunderland fans, if you've been at all the games, do get in touch with me. Teach us something, or got a question for the guys that I can mention on the next show. But we're going to talk about some of the games that we were at, the ones that you can give real in-depth analysis for. Gregor, you were there at the big game at lunchtime on Saturday. Arsenal 3, Nottingham Forest 0. This was billed as the Ange Postecoglou game. He's back. And Arsenal just slightly swept them aside. And by the end of it, you and Johnny Northcroft were talking about Zubamendi and Madeki instead. But so on Forest first, because I think you'd rather talk about Arsenal. But just on Forest first.
Just meh.
Bit meh.
Yeah, there was no signs of
no
Ange
fireworks. No, I thought not the first 10 minutes. I thought, they are pressing a bit higher.
Yeah, Murillo tried a pass out from the back that was intercepted, and Ange was clapping him. I noticed that, but they didn't do much of that. There was a bit more pressing, but actually the thing that's slightly been forgotten in the whole conversation about Forest is that Nuno in the first 3 games of the season was changing the way they played. Mm-hmm. Like I was at the first game against Brentford, and I'd never seen them play that way. They were absolutely smothered them in their own defensive third. So yeah, signs of that. The most interesting part was the last question that Ange had answered in the press conference, which was basically, people were saying, how long until we see Ange ball, essentially? And he was like, Wednesday. They're playing Swansea in the Cup on Wednesday. He's like, it's not going to take long. It's not a project. Can't afford to. This club's been on a upward trajectory. Can't afford to stall that. We've got 2 days training. We've got a game which we can use as kind of to embed principles. That's gold for us. So, according to Ange, we'll see it very soon.
How do you feel about that, Alison, in relation to some of the points you were making about Ruben Amorim, about the idea of a formation and a philosophy? You're saying it needs to be bigger than that. Does that sound like pragmatist Ange, or does that sound like philosophy Ange?
I don't know what that sounds like.
We've got another a lot of exhaling on this podcast today.
I did notice. I mean, I'm amazed you said you saw him applauding on the touchline. I mean, okay, I only had the TV pictures, but he was arms folded or doing nothing again. He's a very passive manager.
That really winds you up. You like a bit of action on the touchline, don't you?
I do. I don't really know why you earn your money. I mean, he's not been there long. Something he could do more of if you just joined a new club is to show your faith in the players and be looking at your iPad and working out, looking at tactics and tweaking things and getting messages to the players. He's just an incredibly passive touchline manager, in my opinion. If it's not going the way he wants it to go, the big picture isn't there for him. He sort of relaxes into it rather than takes a more active stance during the 90 minutes.
To be fair, the way he spoke about the game afterwards was like, these players have all been away on international duty. They come back and their world has changed. It's been turned upside down. We had 1 day to train. I purposefully did not make any changes to the starting lineup apart from the enforced one because of Ola Aina's injury. Hamstrings are already going and he wasn't there yet. So that, and actually that's fair enough. When you're thinking, what did we learn from this game? Crikey, it would have been extraordinary if we learned much after one training session. So it is interesting that he's bold enough to say, you can judge me very soon though, and it will be interesting to see how quickly he tries to turn this around. And actually by the end of it, Johnny and I were speaking about this, by the end of it, Forest looked so unlike Forest with all the changes they made. He reminded us that they made 13 signings over the summer, spent about 180 million quid. That actually there's a good chance he'll tear it up and we'll see something completely different. The most exciting bit for Forest in this game was Dillian Bakwa, who came on in the 60th minute and looked like he could be a star. He signed him from Strasbourg for a decent sum of money. Really, really quick-footed kind of right winger, but left-footed. Lots of cutting several times, putting really dangerous crosses. He looked really good. Savona, the right back they signed from Juventus, not so much. My goodness, he had a tough time, including for the goal with Eze. But as I said before the game, there is a lot to work with. The way he will shape that I think will be very different. To Nuno.
Yeah. Well, what we did learn, speaking of new signings, is that Martin Zubamendi, a bit tasty, isn't he, Gregor?
He is, yeah. I mean, even taking away his goals, he's a Rolls Royce, isn't he?
He just strolls about. He's one of those players that just strolls around the pitch, and he seems to be at the same pace the whole time. You know, like all the kind of great Spanish midfielders. He looks so good. I mean, no Declan Rice either for Arsenal, and he didn't miss him.
No, this is the thing. Arsenal didn't have Saliba. They didn't have because of injury.
Yeah.
Didn't have. Although Saliba, I think, is fit, but he said I could do with a few more days.
Don't need him. They've got Mosquera.
Exactly. Mosquera stepped in, and he's really composed, remarkably composed.
He's massive as well. Arsenal have got to have one of the biggest back six, aren't they?
But
they're huge.
He's a different frame to the other guys. He's more kind of lithe and slim. But he was. You could see he was all kind of positional intelligence when he was dealing with someone like Chris Wood. He was really good, and I think 13 million.
Yeah, what a bargain.
Eze, Madeki, as I say, there's no Saka, no Rice, so no Saliba. That's and then Odegaard went off in the first half.
Yeah.
Last season, that's like an existential crisis. It's what are we going to do?
Yeah.
In fact, it's an existential crisis when Saka's injured. Never mind anyone else. And the biggest thing you could say is that Madeki made Arsenal fans forget that Saka wasn't there.
Who was it, by the way, on the Arsenal preview show that said Madeki would be a really good signing? I forget. Was it?
Well, it wasn't me.
Oh, no, that was me, wasn't it? That was me. That was me. Anyway, Gregor, tell us why Madeki was so good.
He's just so direct. He's had a great week, hasn't he? And
fantastic.
I said in the piece I wrote this morning, you have to caveat a little bit. He played Andorra, he played the Serbia team that everyone thought were going to be great and weren't. He played against Morata at left back for the first 37 minutes in this game, who is a 6'3", burly centre half, not a left back. He was being tortured, but. Then Neco Williams went to left back, and he's a good full back, and he still gave him a tough time. He's just so direct, so committed every time he gets the ball to attacking the full back, and he's got variety as well. There was one. I think it was against. I think Dan and Doy was the man who was marking him, where he kind of stepped beyond the ball twice, two ways. So he didn't even move the ball. He was just moving his body around it, and then darted to the line, and it's bewildering stuff. And then often all he does is just a bit like Saka actually threatens because he's left-footed.
Yeah.
Threatens to do the cross inside or to drive inside. That shifts the defender a little bit, and that opens up the channel down the right, and he's off.
And he does that. He does that run that Saka also does as a left-footed player, where he
Nicholson
knocks
take
it
them.
and he ducks his shoulder in front of him.
Yeah.
So the defender goes, "Oh my god, I can't foul him. It's going to be a penalty," and he just has to let him go.
Yeah.
A really impressive performance.
What happens when Saka's fit then?
Just play them both next to each other.
So, it's so easy to forget. Saka's obviously had injury troubles, and when you're out of sight, you're out of mind a little bit. It's so easy to forget. Arteta used the word. He said he described him. He praised his courage, Madeki, in terms of, as I said in this piece, dealing with the stupid fan reaction when he was being signed by Chelsea. Someone raised a petition, to not sign him. Part of that was to do with the fact that Arsenal keep signing players from Chelsea, and they thought we need to aim higher.
Football fans being a bit tribal and stupid. Who would have thought it? Surely not.
But Arteta was interesting afterwards. He said he spoke to him, and Madueke's reaction was, "I can't wait to play for you and pull on the shirt." And he was like, "Right, I like you." And so he praised the courage for that, and he also praised his courage for the way I described. He just plays, the way he just always gets the ball and attacks. And he also said he kind of plays with a smile on his face and brings joy. But who brings more joy than Saka? No one. No one. I think he could play on the left. He played 4 out of Chelsea's last 5 games in the Premier League on the left. Played the Conference League final on the left. He's still as quick and direct, and I know it's slightly not the done thing these days, but I think he could. But having said all that, Eze wasn't bad. Eze likes the left.
Yep.
They've still got Max Dowman coming through. They've got Nwaneri.
Got
Trossard and Martinelli, although you think they're going to be a bit more in the periphery.
What do you think of Gyökeres? Because this is very early, but pesky editors looking for narratives already. Like Arsenal at home, great. Gyökeres scores, great, absolutely fantastic. Away from home, look a little bit more goal shy. Gyökeres doesn't do as well. Because we're heading into a big run of fixtures. Athletic this week, then City at home. And Newcastle away, all before the end of September, as well as a game against Port Vale. This is when we're going to find out about this Arsenal, which side of those two coins we're talking about.
The thing with Gyökeres is there's two sides to this in that he doesn't do much. He's a bit like Haaland. He runs around. He's physical. He's not as physical as him.
Yeah.
But I read a couple of reports who were sort of just also underlining that the fact that he was just Johnny on the spot, despite not doing anything and being the man to score the goal that Eze put across the box, is something Arsenal haven't had.
Never had, yeah.
So that's a positive. But he's not going to. I just don't think he's going to be a game changer. I think he is someone who has to have the service from the wide players, and that might be okay. But he is, I don't know.
One-dimensional is what you're saying.
Yes, I'm still to be convinced that he's actually of the level.
But that's why I was saying, and as much as we're getting rightly excited about two excellent performances at home by Arsenal, they've then sandwiched them with two questionable away performances as well. So you're not like, fully convinced that this new Arsenal is back. And
Depth,
as I say,
the depth is.
Well, as I said a couple of weeks
ago,
I would think there's a good argument to be made that maybe Liverpool have the best team, best starting 11 of talent, but Arsenal have the best squad. So we'll see. Arsenal a big couple of weeks ahead for them. There's loads more still to discuss, so I want to move on and talk about Tottenham, who got this. Alison Rudd, president and CEO of the Thomas Frank fan club, was on the editing floor with a couple of our colleagues who are Tottenham fans, and I said before this game, West Ham, a struggling West Ham, Tottenham going there, full of promise, full of hope. In the sands of time, in the history of football, this would have been 2-0 West Ham, wouldn't it? At any point in the history of football. But this is Thomas Frank, isn't it? Getting the job done, looking very efficient, and just winning these key games for Tottenham, and they're sitting in third.
Yeah, it was really. I think this was such an important result for Spurs, given how they were completely outclassed by Bournemouth in the game before the international break. And I mean, I just can't stress that had to be a blip for him as opposed to anything meaningful. And he doubled down on his methods. Paulinho, I mean, that's to me sums up what Spurs will be under Thomas Frank. I was a huge fan of Paulinho when he was at Fulham. And in a way, he's a player who goes to a team in Bayern Munich who are trying to play more expansive football, and there's no room for him. So he comes back to the Premier League play for a manager who rewards graft and energy, and turnovers and winning duels. I mean, Spurs had none of that grit and determination about them under Postecoglou. They seem to forget that you need to win the midfield. And he's there battling away, giving Spurs the right to deliver from free kicks and corners and throw-ins, which is what Thomas Frank is very good at drilling. And let's not make him a one-dimensional manager. This was still an attractive performance by Spurs. Just because your goals might come from set pieces doesn't mean what happens in between isn't attractive.
I obviously made that joke when we were talking about the Champions League, but I did think it was striking watching them for 90 minutes. And as I said, colleagues who are Tottenham fans are saying, God, it's a bit like Arsenal, this, isn't it? Piling on the goalkeeper. But it's very effective. I don't mind it at all. Listen, I support a team in League One. I take what I can get. But there's nothing wrong with it at all. Gregor, we are seeing a more...
That isn't all it is.
No, it's definitely not. They were playing some beautiful stuff out from the back as well. But what I'm saying, as I said at the top here, Tottenham don't win these games all the time. West Ham away for so many years, they've dropped points. I think it was a stat. I think maybe Mourinho was the last Tottenham manager to win West Ham away in his first game, and everyone's like, "This is it. We finally cracked it," because they won West Ham away. It's a significant moment. Gregor, your point to Alison's point about style and ideology, you don't mind not lumping it into the box, do you?
No, I mean, look, this has obviously been a theme of the start of the season in terms of like long throw-ins. We already knew about set pieces. Like Frank is a kind of a pragmatic manager, as in stark contrast to Ange Postecoglou, like and even like City, we see City have evolved under Pep Guardiola. Like they signed a massive number 9. That was another theme of the transfer window. Big strapping number 9s, like physicality. Leeds signing team of Man Mountains. Like there does seem to be a bit of a shift to some of the basics. What would historically have been basics in football.
Yeah. I'm very simplifying it by saying stupid things like lump it in.
No, there's still a tweak with intelligence.
Course,
you've got a specific set piece coach who's working on the throw-ins and things like that. But I don't think it's a bad thing. I think we maybe got slightly bogged down in the Guardiola era, and sort of everyone, clearly that was the style of football, the brand of football that yielded the most success, and everyone then tries to emulate it.
Yeah.
Tony Cascarino made that point in his column at the weekend. Like it's people try and clone what the best do. but in perhaps some of the things that were always very effective and effective at countering any brand of football were kind of lost in the fray. And I think Keith Andrews was really good at speaking about this actually at the weekend.
Perfectly brings us on to the final game we're going to talk about. Brentford 2, Chelsea 2. Alison, you were there talking about Keith Andrews. Don't know where to start with this one. A really interesting game. Brentford taking the lead. Chelsea coming back into it with Cole Palmer and a great goal from Moses Caicedo. And then Brentford getting, dare I say it, a very Thomas Frank-esque point against the big London rival. What did you make of this game? Come back to that question that I often ask. Was 2-2 the correct result?
Yes, absolutely. It was a very, very late equaliser from Brentford, but they deserved it on the balance of play. And they surprised me. I went there thinking this is going to be boring and I'm going to miss Thomas Frank and Brian and Mbeumo. It's going to feel like an empty shell of a place.
Did you have a little T-shirt on saying, I miss Tommy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're just a T-shirt shop now.
Yeah. I'm trying to push this. It's branding, mate. That's how you get the real money coming in. Come on.
And then the team sheet didn't help because 5 at the back, you think, well, I can see what your plan is, Keith Andrews. It's going to be just ceding possession and not having much imagination and hoping to catch them on the break. But in fact, they were bold and clever, Brentford, and yes, not quite with the sort of calibre of player of Wissa and Mbeumo, but they had personality and they were confident going forward. And Chelsea made the mistake. I don't know. I mean, I had a little bit of I wouldn't say an argument with Enzo Maresca, but I disagreed with him when he said he wasn't thinking about Bayern Munich because he clearly was.
Interesting.
He said no. If I was thinking,
how did you think so? What in the intensity of
terms,
the way they played, or in the
team selection?
Selection?
Team selection and intensity and attitude. I mean, it was a poor, very, very passive first half with players looking like they didn't really know what they were supposed to be doing. They had 2 world-class fullbacks on the bench, Cucurella and Reece James, and if you were really thinking that Brentford was all that mattered, you would have been playing them starting at least one of them. It just, Fofana and Gittins didn't work. It was definitely, to me, seemed like one eye on the sexier match coming up in the Champions League, a trip to Germany. And he said, no, you're wrong. If I was thinking about Bayern Munich, when João Pedro said to me he wasn't fit, I wouldn't have played him, would I? But I played him even though he wasn't fit because it was very, very important to win in the Premier League. It's slightly false logic to me. Why are you making a player play who isn't fit if you think you can get away with it against Brentford? Isn't that what you're really thinking? So it was definitely a game of 2 halves from Chelsea's point of view, although they need to be, I don't know, they switched off a bit having taken the lead, and miraculously, Brentford seem to be a team stocked with people who can take very, very, very long throws. It's not just like they've got one person. So Kevin Schade, who's there for his pace and his finishing, he's there taking a long throw, which I think surprised Chelsea.
Just very quickly on him, because I feel like we're on Chelsea as a theme, but Thiago and Schade up front. Obviously, Brentford have had this kind of change in their strikers, only a couple of years ago, Tony, Wissa and Mbeumo. How did they look as a front two? They've also got Utara, who they signed in the summer. Is there promise there for Brentford that by Christmas and in the new year we'll be going, this Schade guy's good, or Thiago's really good actually? He's obviously had injuries and things.
There was this moment, there was a long punt upfield. Well, it might have been a very clever diagonal ball, who knows? Yeah. But it was a very long pass, ball high in the air, and Thiago didn't just cushion it, he did a cushioned pass into the path of Schade with it. And Schade looked so absolutely gobsmacked at the skill, he froze for half a second and lost the moment.
Not quite there.
So, but it will be there. Yeah. It will be there once he realises he can do that. So it's a classic case of, and he has a tormenting personality, Thiago, as well. You sort of feel like defenders don't want him running at them, and
Ding.
he goes marauding. He's marauding, and it's one of those players whose personality shines. Right. So he was the cover on the matchday programme, which was hilarious because he wasn't wearing kit. He was wearing casual wear, and it looked just like looked like he was on the cover of some
GQ or something.
Well, yeah. Like modelling some sort of new style.
And what about Keith Andrews? What did you make of him in press conferences?
I wasn't expecting much. I don't know why. I was obviously biased because he's not Thomas Frank, but he was. I mean, obviously he was in a good mood because he'd secured a point that they his team deserved. He'd seen his team play well and their heads not go down when they lost the lead. And he was just very articulate. Just every question he answered with depth of thought, and you felt before he spoke he really listened to the question, and then he answered it properly as opposed to saying what he wanted to say.
Absolutely.
I love managers who do that.
That's like Thomas Frank.
Yeah, absolutely huge weekend for Keith Andrews then. Forget about the point he's won over Alison Rudd. That was arguably his biggest challenge as Brentford manager. Just the final question then on Chelsea, because Alison, you brought up the idea of Champions League.
Wait. Keith Andrews, one thing.
Go on.
One thing. Like, and I like this. This is the same theme as well. Almost every week now, he's got this old school sort of flavour about him as well. Like, and lower league, he's had a eclectic journey in football. The first start, I was at this first game against Forest, and
you said they were
like,
dreadful.
Yeah, and he said we didn't do the basics. Like, people say basics is like, we use it like it's a dirty word. Like, so he was kind of quite cutting about his team there. Against Villa, the 1-0 against Villa, he was like, it was scrappy, it was ugly. He's like, and I loved it.
Yeah.
And then in this game, he's like talking about the snobbery around long throws. He's like, if big teams do it, it's clever and stuff, but we've been doing this for a long time. Like, so I think he's also a good fit in that terms, in that sort of term as well, because Brentford's journey, not too dissimilar to his, and the guy he's replacing, he's obviously worked alongside him, but they have an appreciation of like what fundamental things are in football that get you rewards and success, and like you can talk everything else up, but those are the most important things, and you can see that's clearly his sort of style of management.
Former defender with more than 300 games in the Football League, banging on the table. That's when you know Gregor Robertson's excited about football. Alison, just very quickly then, coming back to Chelsea, final question for you. Do you think Chelsea fans are heading into a potentially frustrating season with the Champions League and all the allure that has after the Club World Cup success of going, well, we could be title contenders, or actually we need to get through in the Champions League? Are we going to get more of this, do we think, from Enzo Maresca?
I got the impression what matters to him right now is the Champions League, and the more he denied it, the more I believed it to be true. So maybe that's unfair of me, but it's quite the leap, isn't it, to go from Conference League?
Yeah.
And I know that some of that was assuaged by winning the Club World Cup to a degree, but still, that was a slightly embarrassing season for Chelsea, and having to divide the club in half, so they almost like pretended they weren't really there, because the players who were playing in the Premier League, they had nothing to do with the team that was playing in some far-flung place no one's ever heard of in the Conference League, where Chelsea, the Chelsea team cost more than the entire budget of all the clubs in the Conference League. It was such a mismatch. So I feel they're back now, Chelsea, where they belong, and if there's more of this toing and froing, and I don't think the juggling worked well enough, Maresca is going to have to juggle better than he did last season to make it another top four finish and do well in the Champions League.
We'll see if it's worth it against Bayern Munich this week in the Champions League. We'll have to leave it there. Alison Rudd, Gregor Robertson, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you too for Paul Hurst. Thank you very much for listening. I know I say this all the time, but do get in touch with me if you've got any questions or points you want to raise to the guys, tom.clark@thetimes.co.uk. We'll see you on Thursday to talk about the Champions League.